Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. He is always prepared and always ready. He joins us on the program right now. Tom, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Cam. How are you?
I am good, man. I appreciate you coming on the program. And, again, there's a lot of stuff going on with Judicial Watch, a lot of stuff going on in D.C. But one of the things that you guys are pushing, and I know some folks would say, why? Tom, it's 2018. The Obama administration is not in office anymore. They haven't been there for a couple of years. Why are you still going after these ATF records, for something that took place during the Obama administration, when the Obama administration tried to go after some very popular AR-15 ammo?
Yeah, what happened in 2015 was they tried to do an end run around the Second Amendment by trying to ban a common form of ammunition for the AR-15 by redefining it under the regs and law as armor piercing, which essentially would have cut it off to most civilians and restricted severely the ability of you to get ammo generally for your AR-15s. Now, there was a big pushback, I think probably by members of both parties, to say that you can't do this. You can't get your gun ban. You also can't get your ammo ban, which effectively it would be the same thing. So the Obama administration pulled back. But we asked for documents about that scheme they had to ban ammo. We got the runaround from the ATF. And in fact, we asked for the records and they said, well, we got these set of records and we found 1,900 others. And they said, what? And we asked them, why don't you give us those 1,900 others or review them and release them to us? And so, well, because they're not responsive to your original Freedom of Information Act request. So they made us go ahead and file a Freedom of Information Act request for those specific records they found, and we had to sue again just in the last few weeks for them. So that's the scheme of the gamesmanship we're getting from the ATF. And the outrageous thing is, as you point out, it's years after the Obama administration left office, and we're still getting this secrecy and transparency designed to protect the dishonest corruption at the ATF. That's how I think anyone would fairly read it.
Well, absolutely. And for I'm sure a lot of our audience remembers this fight over green tip ammo 3 years ago, because a lot of our audience probably contacted the ATF during this public comment period. That was I don't think the Obama administration really anticipated this pushback. Ordinarily, you promote a rule change or you promulgate a rule change. If you get a couple of dozen people commenting, that's a lot. Even for a federal regulation and a nation of 300 million plus people, most people just don't talk about this. But there were a lot of gun owners who sounded off. Over 200 members of Congress wrote the ATF wondering, okay, why is this going on now? And is that one of the things that you're hoping to uncover? Like, what was it that triggered this move to try to ban that ammo at that point in time?
Yeah, you want to see the thinking at the ATF. Were they doing it in an honest way, or were they acknowledging, as I suspect they would, if once we uncover the documents, that they knew a straightforward AR-15 ban wouldn't work? So how is it we curtail the rights of people who own AR-15s to effectively use them? We'll ban their ammo by categorizing entire swaths of the ammo available for the weapon as being inaccessible.
I'm looking here at a story from Newsweek at the time, and they said, quote, many observers, including Bob Cottrell, professor of law at George Washington University, believe the ban was a, quote, backdoor way of trying to limit public access to the AR-15. President Barack Obama, Newsweek wrote, has pushed for stronger gun control, including a ban on, quote, unquote, assault weapons without success. Now his latest attempt appears to have foundered as well. And Newsweek noted at the time there were 80,000 comments from the general public to this proposal, which, again, I don't think the Obama administration was expecting that at all. And just as you guys would like to figure out, and we'd all like to figure out what prompted this, I'd also like to know, and I'd love to see the communication within the ATF about those 80,000 comments from the public, the more than 200 members of Congress, more than, I think, 50 senators who were opposed to this, and what the reaction within the agency was to that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the documents we're asking for are materials used to explain the ban and what was behind it. So the internal workings of the ATF would be very interesting to find out. And again, I don't understand why this administration, this Justice Department, is defending And this DHS is defending the illegal secrecy here. I mean, we have a right to these records, and the only reason we're getting them or may get access to them is because rather than sit by as they violate the law and refuse to turn over anything to us, we're suing in federal court, and that shouldn't be the case with the Trump administration.
Absolutely.
The appointees at these agencies are either oblivious or contemptuous of the right to know.
Talking again with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. And I remember having this discussion with you during the Obama administration, Tom, that, oftentimes it really doesn't matter if there's a Republican or a Democrat in charge, in the White House, because you're dealing with these agencies and, you talk about that institutional, even before we heard a lot about the swamp or the deep state, you were talking about that resistance coming from the bureaucracy, no matter who's in charge at the top.
Yeah, the resting state of the bureaucracy, the neutral state of the bureaucracy is secrecy. The administrative state, bureaucrats, they don't want the American people to know what they're up to. And they generally are hostile to the values of many, many Americans. They're not conservative. They tend to be liberal and they tend to be Democrat. They all have rights to have their views, but they don't have a right to have their partisan views or ideological views color what is supposed to be a neutral application of the law and implementation of the law, no matter who's president. And, they're happy when folks like Obama are in office, but when folks like President Trump are in office, they don't like Republicans, they don't like conservatives, and, Trump is something else entirely to them, so they think they're justified in even ignoring what he directs them to do, which is outright sedition.
All right, now listen, speaking of, it's not outright sedition. I won't go that far, but I don't know if you've seen these comments by former Attorney General Eric Holder earlier today, Tom. But we've got this.
We had an op-ed in the New York Times a few weeks ago talking about officials purposely upending and refusing to enforce directives of the President of the United States. And when government officials do that, you're attacking the government and attempting to overthrow the lawful government, in effect. And that, that's sedition. Whether it's legally sedition, we can argue about it.
Right.
In the common phrase, it's seditious.
Talking again with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. Now, Tom, I want you to take a look at this clip of Eric Holder, former Attorney General. He was talking about, on the heels of Hillary Clinton saying, listen, we just can't be civil with this other side until we take back the Senate and the House. Eric Holder had some comments of his own to make. Take a look and listen to this.
They have used the power that they have gotten for all the wrong things. They want to keep themselves in power. They want to cater to the special interests. It is time for us as Democrats to be as tough as they are, to be as dedicated as they are, to be as committed as they are. Michelle always says, Michelle Obama, I love her, she and my wife like really tight, which always scares me and Barack. But Michelle always says that, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them.
So there you go. Eric Holder down in Georgia stumping for a Democratic gubernatorial candidate there. And again said, when they go low, we kick them. Here's the thing, Tom. I suspect that Eric Holder would say that you guys at Judicial Watch seeking this information is going low. Anything that the right might do that the left doesn't like is all of a sudden going low. Meanwhile, proclaiming somebody to be a gang rapist back in high school without any corroborating evidence, that's not going low. Apparently, that's just good politics.
Well, he's using violent rhetoric. Many folks, I think, interpret that as a call to violence. You had Hillary Clinton talking that we don't need civility anymore until we take power. The incivility is violence. And to have the former Attorney General of the United States call for violence against your political opponents when you don't like what they're doing ought to be very troubling. And this guy already has hundreds of deaths on his hands from the Fast and Furious scandal. So I guess he doesn't care about any other additional violence that occurs as a result of this type of rhetoric. It's just unbelievable. The left is in a revolutionary, violent mode right now, And it's a danger to our republic that we're even having to debate this.
Unfortunately, you're right. And I suspect, Tom, it is likely to get worse before it gets better. But listen, I appreciate you coming on the program. It is always so good talking to you. When do you think we might learn something about whether or not the ATF is going to be forced to disclose these 1,600 documents, or the 1,900 documents, excuse me?
Oh, it'll be a few months. We'll hopefully get a production schedule, and they'll start giving us a page a month or something absurd like that. But we'll get them slowly but surely.
All right, listen, man. In the meantime, thanks again for joining us on the program.
It isn't a page per month. It's usually 50 or 500, so we'll see.
Tom Fitton, President of Judicial Watch. We'll keep our fingers crossed that it's closer to 100.